Welcome once again to the world's most exciting, probably most award-decorated podcast in the world. If I haven't said the world enough, welcome to Group Chat After Dark. Michael, it is so good to see your smiling face once again.
Worldwide. Yeah, it's Group Chat. It's worldwide. It's a phenomenon that cannot be stopped. It's on the YouTubes and the podcast app of your choice. And we're coming for you, cable television.
Speaking of, I would like to, not speaking of cable television, but speaking of the YouTubes, I would like to apologize. There apparently was an issue with last month's episode. I don't know how this happened, but one of our listeners reported to me that when they click the link to the latest episode, it would take them to the previous month's episode, which was our episode on Jack Rebney. And I was like, well, there's no way. So I go and I test it out, and I was like, no, it takes me to our latest episode at the time. I actually sent the link to my wife and said, click this from your phone and see if that took her to that episode. Shortly after that, I noticed that YouTube had replaced, there's something messed up. So it actually, for whatever reason, posted our previous episode twice, even though it initially was correct. So I don't know what's happened, but and YouTube is kind of a pain in the ass where it won't let you replace a video. You have to delete it and completely upload it again.
Before. Yes.
Yeah.
So Group Chatters, our editing department is pretty lackluster, and they tend to not do things completely. So I blame them.
False. This is an error on YouTube's part, because it did work in my initial testing, not only on an Apple device, but an Android device. It went right to the correct video. So I don't know, something happened in YouTube where it messed up after it had been initially uploaded. So I don't know what to really do about it other than delete it and upload it again. So I may do that when I post this episode. But either way,
well,
the one person that watches it,
yes,
we're very sorry.
We're sorry that the video stream is not available for you at your viewing pleasure. We will address the matter with YouTube shortly.
Yes. We got to get YouTube down here to film this.
Go, Scott.
Anyway, we're back and we're here for another episode. But before we get into the real meat of this episode, I gotta know, I'm in a filthy hotel room once again.
Yes.
And I need to scrub it. I need something that's really gonna cleanse it of its filth.
Wow,
what do you think I could use?
You really nailed that one. That was good. I'm impressed. You definitely want to check out Scrub Daddy, the world famous Scrub Daddy, the most how do they phrase it? The best selling product in the history of Shark Tank, the Scrub Daddy. Not to be confused with Scrub Mommy. It's sister brand. And now they have Scrub Family. I think I was reading something about it recently. But you should definitely check it out if you need to clean up some messes. Check out some things that you have going on, and give it a go. They even have the Dish Daddy if you're interested in that. You know, I have a little scrubber thing for my sink that you scrub the pans and stuff with, but check out the Dish Daddy if you're interested in looking for some dish satisfaction. And you can use it with the Scrub Daddy Power Paste.
I have not used the Power Paste. Actually, I've never used any Scrub Daddy products, but I own a few of them. So
well, you should.
I will check them out.
Yeah,
I do know one of our listeners, big into the Scrub Daddy. He went and bought Scrub Daddies because of this podcast. So Scrub Daddy executives, marketing people, if you're listening,
you could have an audience of tens.
10, maybe even a dozen people would hear about the Scrub Daddy, and you would be selling more, at least a dozen more than you're selling right now.
Yeah, this is an audience you're not even reaching right now. So
yeah,
come on, get on board.
Think of the missed opportunities in the audience of random people that Maggle and I know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just wanting to hear about stupid things that we post on the internet.
Yeah.
You could be reaching them and getting them to invest in your product and grow your company.
Yep. So just think about that, because then we could invest in more things like this fantastic sign here, that is definitely really behind me and not at all a virtual background.
And we could pay an editor to edit our YouTube videos.
We could, or we might be able to get somebody to help us do better time management so we wouldn't be shoving these episodes out right before the last minute every month.
Yes, and maybe some content development so we could totally have a topic at least 15 minutes before we film.
Yes, because I must say, Michael has been driving the podcast for the last few episodes because I am the worst and have not come up with topics. Michael comes up with a topic, and I even texted him today in response to his topic idea that he is so much better at this than I am. So I cannot, while I do a lot for this podcast on the back end, Michael, we wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for Michael picking topics. So, Michael, my theoretical hat is off to you.
I'm excited to talk about this today because when I was in elementary school, my best friend's favorite band was none other than Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was really hard into Limp Bizkit for a few years. So I'm excited to talk about it. But we've been talking about this actually in group chat. So it's a real conversation we've had in the group chat um, about these documentaries that have been coming out around Woodstock '99.
Mhm.
The one that I've seen, so Ben's seen a couple others, but the one that I've seen is the one on Netflix. I think it's just called Woodstock '99, and there's some kind of subtitle or something.
I think it's called Trainwreck,
That's
Woodstock,
right.
something like that.
Yeah,
Trainwreck is in there somewhere.
yeah. So I wanted to talk about the history of Woodstock '99 and the absolute shit show that it ended up being, and then also talk about just but what the kids call butt rock, circa 2000 2001. A little Limp Bizkit, some Kid Rock, maybe some Creed in there. I think Creed was on the show list and they pulled out, but um, it's going to be a fun one. So uh, let's just jump in here. Uh, Woodstock '99 was they brought it back as a copy of the Woodstock that they had done in the '60s. Something that I didn't know before I watched the documentary is that they'd actually been doing Woodstock revivals for a few years at that point. This was like the one that they finally got like corporate sponsorship for, but they'd done a couple and they just had failed for various reasons. Maybe uh, just people didn't show up, or there was a lot of people like breaking down barricades and stuff. When they had it was like super rainy, so there was mud everywhere, and they had like a chicken wire fence around it, and people just tore it down and went in and listened for free.
I believe that
Um,
was Woodstock 94. Both those incidents was 94. They decided to try it again.
yeah, so they were like gonna give it another go. They got a corporate sponsorship for this one, big record label signed on, and so they tasked the guy. So it actually ended up being the original planner of the
Hmm.
first Woodstock joined the team and was there. But um, as the documentaries will point out, and if you haven't seen it, this is a spoiler alert, so you should probably turn this off by now. Um, but this was a money making venture for these companies.
Yeah.
They were in it to make money off of people coming to see the bands and hopefully make a profit off all the stuff that they're spending. So they were tasked with finding a location that was not only large enough to hold the people, but also had enough security, um, so that people couldn't break down the chicken wire fence and get in and listen for free. And I'll let Ben fill it in for here. But what did they end up finding as the host site?
I can't remember the exact location. It was in New York. They
It was
found
Rome, New
a
York is the
Rome, New
location.
York. There you go. It was a decommissioned military base, no longer in use, but what they thought was kind of a brilliant move because of the size of it, and there was already facilities on. There was a hospital. There were there were plenty of facilities. There were bunkhouses. There were lots of
Buildings,
things.
yeah.
They had hangars and things for because at this point music had evolved to electronic music, so they were going to have like all night rave parties and things with DJs, and so they thought they had found this perfect site, which I guess in theory, it would have been great to accommodate them. However, the weather and, as Michael pointed out, their attempt to capitalize on the original Woodstock, which was all about peace, love, and music. They really wanted to put dollar signs on all that, and so they cut corners in a lot of places. As Michael said, the security was really just random people that they gave
It's
security
the
shirts
Peace
to.
Patrol, man. It's
The
the
Peace
Peace
Patrol,
Patrol.
excuse me, the Peace Patrol. Really just random guys that they gave shirts to and said, "You're now part of the event security here." No, and in both documentaries that I have seen, because there's also a documentary HBO did. I think it may just be called Woodstock '99. Both documentaries interviewed members of the Peace Patrol that basically said, "Yeah, we didn't have any training and we had no idea what we were doing." They're just like, "You want to be on the Peace Patrol?" And we're like, "Sure." And that was
And
your interview for
and
the
then other
job.
guys were selling the Peace Patrol shirts because like
Hmm.
idiots thought they would get them like exclusive access to the bands
Yeah,
and stuff. So they were like selling it for the price of a ticket, and then they
yeah,
would just be already in there. So
yeah.
they basically made money for
Hmm.
being on the Peace Patrol.
Yeah. Because I think that the Netflix documentary, the guy's like, "Yeah, I've got more shirts, so I sold a few of them
Yeah,
because people thought it would get them backstage and get them access to things that they didn't have," which was not the case. But yeah, this was all they would the promoters would deny this, I'm sure, uh, for the rest of their lives. But this was a corner cutting money making scheme. They cut any sort of budgets where they could to make them more profitable for them. And as we will discuss throughout the meat of this podcast, that really came back to bite him in the ass in pretty much every way possible.
yeah, in a lot of ways I didn't expect. So it was pretty wild. I was I think so Woodstock '99. I was 9 when this happened. So I probably was not in the target demo at the time, but it was pretty wild. I was not familiar with a lot of the stuff they went through. I knew about it just from you know people talking about it later on, but um, it was pretty wild. So this military base they selected as an Air Force base, which means it's basically just a place for planes to take off. So there's like no there's no grass. It's all concrete
Yeah.
and pavement. And so and they had this thing in the middle of the summer. So the temperatures were getting up to like 100 degrees. And so it started, and people were like, yeah, it's hot and whatever, but it's not too bad. We've got water. Apparently, according to the Netflix doc, they made you dump everything out when you came in. So you couldn't take any water in there with you, I guess to keep you from smuggling stuff in. I don't really know. But that ended up killing them in the long run. But they were doing
Almost
well.
literally.
Yeah, they were doing pretty okay. Sheryl Crow was playing. The crowd was kind of like frat bros, so um, they were a little bit weird with Sheryl Crow, but it was starting to go okay. And then the first night is kind of where where shit really started to hit the fan. And honestly, it wasn't too bad. Um, so they had somebody on before Corn, I think, and then Corn was like the headliner that night. Um, and so the corn show started, and the crowd just went wild and nuts. And the lead singer of Corn said that like he's never seen a crowd like that
Hmm.
before. Um,
Well,
and
and I forget if you've got attendance numbers pulled up. I mean, this there really haven't been music shows like this before, and that was kind of their goal. They wanted to have the biggest concert in the history of the world, and I think they achieved that. If some of the numbers I
it
recall
was
from the
four hundred
documentaries.
thousand people, and the gross on ticket sales, I believe, were 28,864,748 dollars.
Yeah,
They advertised the cab at
just on
two
ticket
hundred
sales.
fifty thousand. Yeah. But the Wikipedia article says it was estimated that ticket sales were estimated 60 million in revenue. So
And that's
um,
the lead singer Korn described it. He said he's like, you do lots of concerts. You're used to going on stage, but he said you're not used to seeing a literal ocean of humanity.
Yeah.
And as the area that they were in was so big that as the music was hitting, of course, the way sound travels, you could see the music hitting the crowd as they were reacting to it. So he said it was like literal
You could
waves
see waves. Yeah.
of the music hitting the people and the people in the back reacting, well after the people in the front. And it just, I can't imagine, like I'm kind of getting tingly to thinking about seeing something like that. I can't imagine as a performer being on a stage like that and seeing something like that. So it started off kind of cool, like they were achieving what they wanted. The problem was, and you pointed it out, frat bros. Uh, Something that I was really struck by in both documentaries was, uh, and I was 13, 14 around this time. So I knew this was happening, but it didn't really
Yeah.
resonate with me. I didn't really get why, or, it wasn't something I was super into. So it didn't make much sense. But looking back on it now as a somewhat worldly adult, like it was all white people.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like just in all this massive humanity, it was all angsty, mostly male, white, college kids.
Yeah.
Which
Did you catch the Easter egg in the Netflix documentary?
I don't
Uh,
know.
One of the attendees they had some old video footage from it. One of the attendees was a white man, but he was no other than the Miz.
Oh,
Uh,
I did see.
the Miz was there. Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, was that because he says like MTV something like into
Yeah.
the camera, and I was like, was that the Miz? And I
It
wasn't
was.
really paying that much attention, but yeah, yeah, okay. So there you go, perfect, perfect example. If you know who the Miz is, you can imagine what the rest of the crowd looked like because that was pretty much the
That was the
crowd for
crowd. Yeah.
Woodstock '99.
Yeah. Apparently, tickets cost at the time they cost $150, which to me is not outrageous for
No,
what, a 3 day show with
3 day, all
12
day
or
festival.
16
Yeah,
bands. Yeah. So Wikipedia conveniently did the conversion. So in 2021 dollars, that's $240,
there
which
you go.
is getting up there.
Yeah.
But
But still, when you break it down by a day and how many bands you're seeing and everything, which, like I say, on paper, it's like it's actually pretty good value.
yeah,
Because I'm assuming it means I also get to camp there. I don't know, perhaps because I don't think either of the documentaries really covered that. The ticket got you in, and then of course you had to pay for food and everything. But I don't, I'm assuming they also didn't have to buy camping spots.
what
But I
Netflix
mean,
said is there was a camping area for a certain amount of people.
uh,
So I don't know if they sold tickets to everybody to camp or not.
okay,
I couldn't figure that part out.
yeah.
Um, but I did find that uh, a lot more people they probably underreported ticket sales on purpose to have to keep from paying vendors certain amounts of money.
Probably.
So it may have been more than 400,000 people.
Because
Um,
one of the things that they point out in the documentaries was the fact that in one of the cost-cutting measures, they sold all the rights to food. All the food and beverage rights were sold to keep costs down, which meant they didn't have to buy any of that to supply,
yeah.
So the pricing of all the food and beverage items was up to the vendor. Well,
And how
they've
much
got
was food at the original Woodstock? Did you catch that part?
it was free.
Yeah.
Everything was free. Yeah. They gave food away because it was all about peace, love, and everybody getting along, which, I Woodstock was this mythical thing, growing up. I knew it was a thing. I didn't really understand what it was, or I just I always saw it as a dirty hippie party where they were doing drugs and listening to music. But according to a lot of these reports, it went great. There were really no issues, and they like I knew like Jimi Hendrix played and did his thing, and everybody like, but I didn't know that it was actually like a unity festival. Like everybody actually got along, and it was a great thing. So yeah, they decided to capitalize on everything for the Woodstock 99, 30 years after the original Woodstock, and they this was the first thing that really started kind of biting them in the ass was, to Michael's point, you couldn't bring any drinks in. Well, so a bottle of water in 1999 was
Yeah.
upwards of $4,
Yeah. Which
which
we look at, we're like, oh, that's normal. But
Yeah.
back then, like it at the store, a bottle of water was like 89 cents.
Yeah, much less than a dollar.
Right.
So yeah, so you get them in at $150 a pop, which is fairly high for $99. And then if you want a bottle of water, it's $4
Hmm.
each time. And there's supposed to be free water available, yet
We'll
there
talk
weren't
about
enough
that in a minute.
stations.
Yeah.
Yeah, so things continue to spiral from
Yeah.
there.
Well, and let's talk about, so you mentioned something interesting, like the original Woodstock, it went really well. At this point in time, the type of music they were going after was
Mhm.
just totally different. So in 1999, we'd come out of grunge, people are tired of kind of, doing the um, angsty type of music. And now it's all about like angry white
Mhm.
man rebelling against the machine.
New metal.
There you go. And so you got uh, these people that were organizing the original Woodstock. I don't think really understood the type of bands that they were booking for this new Woodstock. Nor do they really care. I think it's more just these are the big names. I want to get the most people I can, so let's do that. But I think it's interesting to think about the type of people that are attracted to the music that was being showcased at the event. That seemed to lead to a lot of interesting problems. So the first night, I think, was it Bush that closed things up? Yeah,
Bush came on after Corn,
yeah. And
which
so Bush is a little bit like more chill, just a little bit. And so the Netflix documentary specifically pointed to Gavin Rossdale as being
mhm,
like somebody that could read the crowd and kind of brought them down for the night
yeah,
so that they could go to the raves or whatever overnight and be
which is
fine.
actually that's pretty impressive because even lead singer of Corn mentions, and I forget what is his name, Jonathan
Jonathan
Davis?
something,
I
yeah,
think it's Jonathan Davis. He's like, I kind of felt bad for Bush because he's like, you know, we got him into such a frenzy, and then to go on after that when a crowd that with a crowd that big to try and control it, and to Bush's credit, I guess specifically they really kind of put it on Gavin Rossdale's shoulders. He was able to control the crowd, to bring them back to a more kind of neutral, maybe not completely chilled out, but to bring them back from the frenzy that Corn had whipped them into. So that's actually pretty impressive to be able to bring a crowd that size back down to earth. So,
yeah. So that was like day one. There was overnight raves in the hangars, which is pretty cool to think about.
mhm,
It's a big room that they've got people
yeah,
in, but apparently that went decent. And then you started day two. People reported on day two they were waking up and there were these dudes, or I guess there was also women. It didn't look like very many women were there, but they were playing in the mud, right? So there was mud from some kind of water source and and people were sliding around, mixing around in it, which was a big thing at the
yeah,
first Woodstock in the 60s. Um, as Creed said, I think there was a lot of mud, a lot of rain, and it's
yeah,
possible a man slipped in.
yeah.
You'd never
There's
know.
no way of knowing.
But they were recreating that kind of feel. Come to find out, the mud was made of something special. So let's talk about what the mud was made out of.
In another brilliant corner cutting method, they had farmed out all the sanitation and not really done so in a very economical way. There were a few trucks to clean the porta potties, and a crowd that size, you're not going to get all that done in time. So basically, all the porta potties were overflowing. Uh, at one point, and I can't remember, the timing may be different on this, but at some point there's a loud outcry for water from the crowd, and they burst a pipe
Yeah,
that's providing water, which then gets into the runoff from the porta potties and creates the mud,
yeah.
which it's really just shit water. It's shit water.
It's shit water. Yeah, yeah, it is. They
Yeah.
were with flopping around in shit water. Actually
Mhm.
led to people getting um, what they call trench mouth, and
Yeah,
everybody's heard of trench foot from World War One, but there's also one called trench mouth.
yeah,
So if you're drinking contaminated water, you're going to get sores, and it's
yeah.
actually it's the herpes virus is what it
Mhm.
is.
And that's
Um,
that. I did not know that from the first documentary I had seen. They did not go into that. They obviously went into the lack of water and bursting the pipe and everything and the shit water, but they didn't then go. The Netflix documentary goes into the fact that they tested the water.
mhm.
They had uh, sanitation come in to test the water, and every single water site was off the charts contaminated with bacteria that it's
Yeah,
not drinkable water that they were serving people from the free water sites.
yeah,
Um,
because they had like fountains and things for you to
mhm,
refill your bottle, be a little eco-friendly, whatever,
yeah,
take a shower, whatever. So people were drinking from the showers, which is never a good idea because it's just
no
recycled water. Um,
shit water.
so so they were swimming around in the shit and having a
Literally,
good
quite
time doing
literally.
it. So that was pretty disgusting. And I guess people at the festival learned quickly to avoid the people that were covered in mud because it's not mud.
Yeah.
But that was pretty gross. And then
So
because they
not
farmed
only
out
have you been
sanitation,
gouged every
yeah,
which way, now you're covered in shit and you're getting sick,
and
and it's going to get really hot.
they farmed out the sanitation, which also includes trash guys. So there's just trash everywhere. People are throwing trash just in the floor. They're throwing it. They throw it in trash cans, but the trash cans are overflowing so
Well,
bad
and
it's
yeah,
just kind of like a
to their
sea.
credit, once they did put it in the receptacles, yet
Yeah,
they never got emptied. So then it's being blown out, which makes people think, oh, everybody's just throwing it on the ground, so we may as well throw it on the ground too. So I don't think it started as just throw it on the ground, but once it gets to be out of hand, well, there's no point in putting it in the trash can because it's going to end up on the ground anyway.
yeah. And so during his set, why for some reason Wyclef Jean played this show. I don't know why, but he did.
Well, he was
Um,
popular at the time.
and he was like he it was ending his set. He was all pumped, and he was like he told the crowd to grab whatever trash was around him and pelt it at the stage, and
Yeah,
everybody literally did that. And he broke a guitar and then
he
left.
he decided to play the national anthem,
That's right. Yeah,
much like Jimi Hendrix
like
did at
Jimi
the
Hendrix.
original
Yeah,
Woodstock. So, for whatever reason, he announces to the crowd, while I play this, feel free to throw your water bottles at the stage. I don't know why, because then the footage from the Netflix documentary, he's playing kind of with his head down to
yeah. So he
avoid
doesn't
being
get
hit in
hit
the
by a
face.
bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like that seems
which was
much more
wild.
difficult. So why would you encourage people to throw garbage at you while you're playing? But whatever. I'm not an artist, so maybe I don't understand.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I don't get it either. But that was so there's trash everywhere. It's over 100 degrees. You're on concrete. There's shit water flowing everywhere. And now you have to pay $18 for a bottle of water and a pretzel. So people are just getting consistently pissed.
Yeah.
Their bullshit meter is just going up and up
Yeah.
and up and up. And so it's like, how much can people take? Well, it turns out they can take a little bit more. So the second day keeps going. There, different people are playing, and the the headliner for the second night is none other than Fred Durst and the band behind me, which is
I'm
Limp,
sorry. You're
Limp Bizkit.
I have to step in and introduce you wanted the worst. You got the worst. The one, the only Limp Biscuit.
Limp Bizkit. Yes,
Because
there
I
it is.
was, as I mentioned, 13 to 14 years old during this time. So naturally, I
Chocolate
am a
starfish in the hot dog flavored water.
I'm a huge Limp Biscuit fan. And this is a couple years before chocolate,
Chocolate starfish, hot
whatever
dog
it was.
flavored water.
Yeah, hot dog flavored water. This is before that. This was Nookie was the big hit, which was on, and this shows how nerdy I was about it. That was on their Significant Other album. It was their second album, and it
Wow.
was huge. So of course I had the CD. If you don't know what those are, kids, I had the disc. Limp Bizkit was everywhere, and I was there for it, man.
They were
That
very
was yeah.
popular. They were very popular. Looking back on it, I mean, I don't really find their music all that
It's not
particularly
good. It's not good
enjoyable.
music.
Yeah. But for the time, it was like the shit.
For me,
So
the nostalgia is still what makes me
yeah,
like, for whatever reason this morning, and I know it's not their song originally, but this morning in the shower, I couldn't stop singing Faith, which
nice.
was a George Michael song that they then covered and gave this whole new edge to. But that was, I had never heard the George Michael version when Limp Bizkit came around. So I was like, this is revolutionary shit, man. But this morning, today, 2022, I'm taking a shower and Faith is going through my head.
Wow.
So yeah, so I get the nostalgia for the Limp Bizkit music because in my quote unquote formative years, that was a big soundtrack to it. So and then of course the song that they play that breaks everything apart, what I still love that song, to be honest with you.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
really good when you're pissed off. It's
the
good.
energy, even if you're not, like, for me, even if I'm not pissed off, it's just when that song breaks, when it really breaks down, I get so pumped. And
Yeah.
it's like, and that must be the basic white teenage boy inside me still lives there. And I, if I hear that song to this day, I get this kind of crazy energy from that song, and it's hard to explain. But yeah, and for me, it was never about being pissed off. It was just like, this is fucking great. Like this
Yeah.
this music is great, which it wasn't. But anyway,
Yeah. Break stuff was their that was their what they were kind of gunning for. That was their last song. I think they actually got the hook. The organizers pulled them off the stage. But
I think they tried to portray it as that
oh, okay.
because, and I don't know because again I
Yeah.
wasn't there and didn't watch, but in both documentaries they sort of try to vilify Limp Bizkit, specifically Fred Durst.
Yeah. Well, because
Uh,
he came out and said before
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Before they played Nookie, he was like, "It's time to let yourself go because there ain't no
Mhm.
motherfucking rules right
Yeah.
now."
He even,
Um,
and he said it's like a famous, he's like, take all that negative energy. When this song breaks down, I want you to take all that negative energy. If you've got girl problems, job problems, like money problems, take all that negative energy. And when this song breaks down, I want you to break down.
yep.
So I mean, certainly, but it again,
You
going back
booked
to,
Limp Bizkit. You
you
booked Limp
booked Limp
Bizkit.
Bizkit at the biggest concert in the world. So one of the biggest bands in the world at the time. What so I have trouble, again, because both documentaries seem to point the blame, especially from the promoters side of things.
Yeah.
The promoters point the finger solely at Fred Durst and say that he fucked everything up and he got this crowd,
He amped everybody up and then just left.
and
Yeah.
he did. But
Yeah.
what was
That's
he
what he's paid to
supposed to do?
do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, I mean, as an entertainer, are you not supposed to go out and entertain and to get the crowd to a level in which they've never been? Like, I mean, so it's like yes and no, but yeah, like the problem I have with blaming Limp Bizkit, not just as a fanboy back in the day, but I mean, Fred Durst is a fucking moron. There's no denying that. He's a moron. Uh, he probably should have had some of Bush's frontman's insight
Couth.
into,
Have some couth.
let's bring this in. Maybe we don't play break stuff for this crowd.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Or don't play it last.
yeah, so maybe just play it straight, like right off the album. Maybe not amp it up. So he should have probably been able to read the crowd. But again, how are you not going to try to tear the house down, literally and figuratively, at the biggest concert in the world? So there's that. But when you fuel the fire, sorry for the foreshadowing there, when you fuel the fire of the crowd of not enough uh resources to go around,
Yeah.
you're literally wallowing through shit to get to the
They're
stage.
they're pretty pissed off. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and they're in the sweltering heat, they're being price gouged everywhere. You are literally poking the bear at every turn,
They
and
got an
we're in
outlet.
this
Yeah.
era of angry music.
Yep.
So yeah, like, and there's even a guy in the Netflix documentary who's like, I actually brought up the fact in a meeting that I don't think you realize the lineup you've got here, what you're doing. And they're like, shut the fuck up, little hippie boy.
Yeah.
You don't know. We're trying to make money here. And he's like, don't you realize the energy this is all you put, Limp Bizkit and Corn and just and Kid Rock and just all this kind of new metal stuff. It's gonna it's gonna bring some energy that you might not want. And they're like, yeah, yeah, pipe down, kid.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I
So
apologize.
no. It's good. And so there's a scene, and I think everybody's seen it by now. But Fred Durst is crowd surfing on top of this piece of plywood that the people had ripped off of the fence because they put plywood on the fence so you couldn't see through it. And so they ripped this plywood off and we're holding it
Actually, I
up,
think the
and he's up
plywood was
there.
from like their towers, like the sound towers and
Oh,
things,
that's right.
because they didn't
Yeah,
want people to go up on them,
that's
and
right.
they had
Yeah.
ripped them down, and they started crowd surfing. Because there's a video that I'll actually include in the show notes. There's a video where Fred Durst is having trouble knowing whether or not they can hear
Yeah.
the crowd can hear him.
This is a funny video. I've seen it a
And
couple
yeah, and
times.
it
Yeah.
goes on. They're having maybe some audio issues. I can't tell if maybe he just wasn't getting in his monitor. He couldn't hear, something was going on, and he's like, "Can you hear me?" And he's like yelling at the crowd, and there's not much of a response. And he's like, "What?" And he at one point he goes, "That's pretty dope, crowd surfing on the plywood." So then at some point the plywood makes it up to the stage, and Fred Durst crowd surfs on it, even though there's like six people from the stage like holding him from getting away.
And
And
he's
like
stomping on the plywood. I mean, it's
he's
not,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. So he's on it, and there are people holding it up, and they're trying to kind of move it, but there are other people holding the plywood and holding on to Fred Durst. So it's kind of a anticlimactic visual, but it's pretty funny to watch. But anyway, I'll include that video. I'll find that video of
Nice.
him trying to figure out if the crowd can hear him and put it in the show notes.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah,
it's pretty funny. But so Limp Bizkit hypes this crowd up. They just leave, and so you've got this pissed off crowd and that was the end of the night. So they were like looking for things to do. So they go to this rave, right, which is running all night long in the hangar. So people are in there raving. This is this is the height of Fatboy Slim, which is funny to think about now because I think that was all of like 30 days. But
wow.
um,
You
Fatboy
don't know.
Slim,
You were too young.
Fatboy Slim was he's in the hangar. He's doing his thing, and all of a sudden there's two headlights pop up from the far back of the crowd, and he's like, "What the hell is going on?" Turns out somebody got intoxicated and or high on something and drove a truck into the hangar that they had just found sitting. I guess it was some event staff or
It was like
something.
an ambulance or something. I
Yeah,
feel like it was like a big. It was like some sort of responder vehicle. I can't remember exactly what it was,
yeah.
but yeah,
They drove it in the Fatboy Slim set, and Fatboy Slim had to stop,
yeah.
and they had to go commandeer the vehicle. Unfortunately, they found some stuff in there, which
Yeah,
I don't really think it's for us to get into too much,
no,
but
it's
some bad stuff happened in the vehicle, and that was kind of the escalation point for the rest of the event.
well.
So
So the hangar, because the stuff in the hangars would go on after the main
mhm,
stage events. So they go. I mean, all literally all night long. The
yeah,
shows would end at like 10, 11 o'clock, and then till 6 in the morning, you can party all night in the hangar and rave. But it apparently was like a lawless swamp in the I mean, even more so than the rest of the facility. In the hangars, in the dark,
yeah, it's dark. There's
uh
nobody in
yeah,
there like policing it.
no, there, I mean, the reports of just people handing out drugs, handing out ecstasy and God knows what else, and just like lines of people fucking, like,
Yeah,
like I could not imagine being in that environment where it's just like there are literally no rules and you can do whatever you want and everybody around you is. So anyway, all that going on, and then somebody drives a vehicle into it. I mean, you don't get much crazier than that. I mean, obviously, like to your point, we're not going to get into the other stuff, but lots of other things happen that just
yeah.
are terrible to think about.
And I guess now it's probably we plugged it a little bit at the beginning, but if you haven't seen the documentaries, there's one on Netflix and one on HBO that Ben mentioned earlier. Definitely check them out. It goes into detail, so a
Mhm.
little bit of a trigger warning on that. There's some
Yeah.
sexual assault involved,
Mhm.
but They are good documentaries if you're looking for the inside scoop. So that was the second day. Then there was a last day. So there was another day of swimming through shit water to get to see the stage.
If you
Um,
can imagine the conditions from day two getting even worse, I mean, they did because
it
there's
just
less
continued. Yeah.
resources. There's things just keep dwindling and people are getting more and more angry. So
Yeah. So the third day goes on, it's not really good. Nobody's really having a good time anymore. But they get to the headline. So everything happens. They get to the headlining stage of day three. And the band that is closing the show out is Red Hot Chili Peppers, which makes sense actually given the time. I think
they were
Californication
huge.
had
Yeah.
just come out not that long ago. So it was a smart move to do it that way. So they're playing, and at the original Woodstock, there was apparently a setup, and I don't really know about this too much, but there was a setup where they passed around candles, and everybody kind of was in unity holding these lit candles around. And so somebody thought, and it's unclear to the two of us how this happened because one documentary says it was some group that was not affiliated
Hmm.
with the event. The other one says it was actually the event
Yeah.
organizers. But somehow somebody started passing out candles. They lit them, and Chili Peppers were they playing Under the Bridge? I think.
I think so. I think that's when they said that the candles started getting lit.
Yeah,
Um,
and so they give these people that are pissed off to the max. Um, Fred Durst a night earlier had just whipped them into a frenzy, and they give them an open flame, and that turns out to be the downfall of the event. So people get these flames, and they immediately start lighting things on fire. Uh,
Apparently, it was very beautiful during Under the Bridge when
yeah,
the
for
Chili
about
Peppers are
30
playing.
30 seconds. Yeah.
As that song is going, and you see this beautiful light spreading throughout the crowd in the dark, apparently for a brief moment in time, it's like, wow, look at this. Because again, a crowd that size for however long, all doing the same thing. They're enjoying the show, and the light is spreading through the crowd. More powerful imagery, I would struggle to find. Mm. But this is a powder keg, and when you put a flame near the powder keg, well, you know what happens.
Yeah. So they start lighting anything and everything in their power on fire. So there's those boards around the sound stage they're lighting on fire. People are up in the scaffold still running the sound equipment for the Chili Peppers while the freaking structure is on fire, which is wild. They finally bailed out of there, I think. But other people are lighting, piles of trash on fire.
Which
Uh,
there were plenty of piles of
many,
trash. There was
yeah.
lots of fuel for that fire.
So I was reading a quote here on Wikipedia. Anthony Kiedis compared it to Apocalypse Now when he
Yeah.
looked out into the crowd and just these giant bonfires are just starting to spring up out of nowhere. They were lighting vendor stuff on fire, and eventually like refrigeration tanks and things were exploding. So it sounded like bombs were going off. And so it just slowly descended into chaos. And for some reason, the Chili Peppers thought it would be good to do an encore and come back out. And what song did they play when they came out for the encore?
Well, they came out. I think, if I remember correctly, the event staff or the promoters were saying, "Hey, can you guys go back out and
Yeah, that's right.
try to bring them back because it was descending into chaos." So they thought maybe they could get them roped back in, and for whatever reason, which seems like more of an instigating thing than anything Fred Durst did, they go back out on stage and play "Light My Fire" by Jimi Hendrix
Yeah. So I just
as
learned
the
this.
place is burning down.
I just learned this reading Wikipedia just now. This is the reason apparently why they did that. They said that, and this is from Anthony Kiedis's autobiography.
Okay.
Jimi Hendrix's sister contacted them and said, "Hey, can you guys play Fire to honor Jimmy and his performance at the original Woodstock?"
Okay.
And so that's what they decided to do. Why they decided to wait until everything was literally descending into a pit of flame,
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's what they
And
decided to do.
again, it could be some creative editing that made it look like they came back
Maybe,
out and played that.
yeah,
It could be either way. That was their plan because apparently at some point word had spread there was going to be some big secret act to cap the night
An
off.
unadvertised
Yeah,
performer. Yeah.
and that's they don't really know how the rumor mill got started there, but I think the thought was the candlelight vigil will be the
The signal. Yeah.
right, the big send off. That's the special event. Well, somehow word got out that Michael Jackson was going to be, the Prince was going to be, like some huge act was going to show up unannounced and play a set after the Chili Peppers. So all this fuel on the proverbial fire, and then the candlelight vigil begins, and the Chili Peppers are like, "Good night, everybody," and then they play a video up on the big screen of Jimi Hendrix
Yeah.
playing, and people just lose their minds because they're like, "Where's Prince?" Whatever secret, whatever the rumor mill had gotten around and whipped these people into him, they're like, "Well, it's going to be worth it if we stay till the end because such and such is going to be here," and then that's it. The candles were the big event, and they so why not just burn this motherfucker down? And that is what I mean, looting, just violent, flipping cars over, like imagine any war-torn footage
Yeah.
you've ever seen.
I've actually got some stats here. They tallied up some stuff. So
Okay.
um, apparently there were ATMs, I guess, to get cash out to
Yeah.
buy your $18 bottle of water. So it was estimated that $22,000 were stolen from ATMs during these riots. And eventually, about 12 trailers, a small bus, a number of booths, and porta potties were damaged by fire. Some had coolant or propane tanks that exploded. We were talking about that. And
Mhm.
one guy actually died. Well, no, actually, this says 3 people total died at the
Yep.
festival. Um, 2 people died before the last day, and then the last one to die was actually there for Metallica show. He's like a lifelong Metallica fan, and he died. Apparently, his body temperature was 107 degrees when he passed away, unfortunately. So,
Apparently,
um,
and this came a lot of, we were talking about this right before we started. In the HBO documentary, you really get insight into, they kind of use him as like a narrative thread throughout their documentary. It's the Netflix is split up into 3 episodes, and the
yeah,
HBO is just one feature. Throughout the HBO documentary, they sprinkle in information about this kid who was really big Metallica fan, and they even had some journal entries from him, and they would kind of read through it. He's like, "Today was tough, but it's all going to be worth it when I get to see Metallica." And then his friends were interviewed. So that's a very interesting kind of narrative tool they use. And it's pretty obvious early on something bad happens because this you realize this guy's not being interviewed,
yeah,
and he's being talked about in the past tense. So that's leading up to ultimately his death. And I believe it was they treated him improperly as far as when he collapsed. They didn't treat
yes,
him for heat exhaustion.
yeah. This says that they initially tried to treat his symptoms because he's having seizures,
Hmm.
and so they thought he was just OD'd on drugs, but it
Yeah.
turned out that he was having heat exhaustion or
Mhm.
heat stroke. I think they officially said he had hyperthermia.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And that's ultimately what they could have saved him, but I guess the in the moment they tried to treat him for something else quickly, and that didn't do him any favors, and yeah, he was not able to
Yeah, so they had
survive.
they had to call in the state troopers. So they'd call in the big guns to come kind of quell the thing
Yep.
here. So it was pretty wild. Apparently, there was between 500 and 700 state troopers, which is a lot.
That's a
Uh,
lot.
Came in and kind of shut things down. There's differentiating accounts on did they actually close things down or just let people kind of rage out until they fell asleep and then put everything out the next morning. It's hard to tell, but this New York State Department of Health estimates that there were 5,162 medical cases related to the festival alone, which is a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
probably not equipped to handle that many
yeah,
medical issues.
apparently it took 3 weeks to clean up the site after they were done, and they spent about $78,000 putting down new sod um, where there was grass on site. So
Had to fill up that shit water.
Yeah, yeah. So it's it was a wild event. People were not happy at the end of it. And then eventually somebody for the San Francisco Examiner came out and said this was the day that the music died.
Hmm.
So there you have it, Woodstock 99.
Woodstock 99. I don't think there should ever be another Woodstock after the disaster that was Woodstock 99.
And there never has been. I don't think there's any plans to do one.
Well, the initial plan was to do one every 30 years.
Oh wow.
So, but
Getting there.
spoiler alert, the original founder of the Woodstock Festival has passed on.
Yeah.
He's actually interviewed in the Netflix documentary. And I don't know about you, but like in the original or in the HBO documentary, there was archival footage of him, interviews from like the original Woodstock and things like that. And he was a young kid, and I didn't get a good impression of who he was. In this newer documentary where they actually talked to him, I thought he was just a real smug prick. Like
Yeah,
I
agreed.
did
No, I
not.
was gonna call him a douche.
Yeah,
So, which he's passed on now, so
yeah.
I don't like talk ill of the dead. But
Yeah, I kind of felt bad when it reveals that he had passed away shortly after they shot all that stuff, but I was like, I still don't think he was a good person.
yeah,
And it just something he was odd. And
well, it was like he was in weird denial about the whole
yeah,
Woodstock
that's
'99 thing,
another thread through both documentaries is the press conferences that would take place at kind of at the beginning and end of each day.
which were not scheduled to actually happen. They had to do them out of
Some were scheduled to happen. I think there's one that was kind of a on the off the cuff. I think it was toward the last day, maybe the
yeah,
morning of the last
because
or the morning
MTV had it on
after.
pay-per-view, right? So they were
Yeah,
doing like check-ins with the
yeah.
people.
And but just I mean, for the local press, they were doing these press conferences, big press junkets every day for the event. And I think the morning after there was not supposed to be a press conference,
Yeah.
and they ended up having to have one because it's like, uh, you pretty
What's
much
going
burned the
on?
place down.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but and they in all these press conferences in the morning, so many accounts of they were just sweeping stuff under the rug. They're like, yeah, everything's going great. Yeah, we're having there's there was like a dozen knuckleheads last night that caused some trouble, but we squashed that pretty quick. And it's like, no, you didn't. Uh, and you see people from the press, people basically counterpointing everything they're saying or basically disproving everything they're saying, and then they cut to footage of the actual press conference where they're just flat out lying about how things were handled or what happened. Uh, all in the sake of, well, we don't want too much bad press because we want to do this again. We want to make a lot
yeah.
more
They want
money
to make more
again.
money. Yeah,
So anyway, that was just another interesting tool they used to, and again, it could be creative editing. I don't think it was. And even the talking heads of the promoters just seemed like they were blind to a lot of that because I mean, blinded by money, which happens quite often, but just they didn't want to see it that way, and they're like, yeah, it was that fucking Fred Durst.
yeah.
If he hadn't have showed up, that
Well,
wouldn't have happened.
well, I was going to ask you as we wrap up. I know we've been going for a little while here, so as we kind of wrap things
Yeah,
up, who do you think is to blame for? Is there a single person to blame for all of this?
I think I think ultimately, I mean, yeah, there were a lot of elements, but I think ultimately it all comes down to the focus on profits over anything else, which
Yeah,
I would say is solely on the promoters for all the corners they cut, because that was the first domino that knocked all the rest down. And yeah, Fred Durst didn't help. Again, he's not a smart man. I would not argue that he had nothing to do with it. He certainly didn't help things, but for them to turn and point the finger at him, it's like, well, you're just looking for somebody to blame because you can't admit that this was he didn't help, but you really kind of started that. Again, he didn't knock all he didn't tip that first domino over. You had done that days before, months before in the planning of the event. So to me, the promoters and their greed is what is mostly to blame. Other things didn't help, but that's where I think the most blame should go.
yeah. I agree. I agree to an extent. I think they were never focused on having a good festival. and making the experience good. I think it was just about what can we do the least of to get the most money out of it,
Mm.
which I understand. I do.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously people made a lot of money. Something I literally just learned, I was clicking around the Wikipedia page here. They had planned another Woodstock. Woodstock 50 was planned for August 2019 and was canceled
Yeah.
because of a variety of issues. But and then apparently the founder passed away. So I don't know if they're ever going to do it again. But I think it became less about people having an experience and about how much money can we make off of those people. And that's where it just went wrong. Honestly, I think if they had not cut so many corners or done some stuff that is more focused on the festival experience, so real security, for example,
Yeah. Right.
um, it probably would have been a pretty good event.
I think it could have been, and yeah, I am I'm pretty firmly in the camp of there should not ever be another Woodstock.
Agreed.
Um,
Yeah.
but I also hate it for the people that saw the original and knew what it was and might want to redeem the event. So I could understand why people might want to do it, especially now that the original founder, and I forget his name,
Michael
uh,
Lang is the
Michael
guy's
Lang.
name. Yeah.
Now that he has passed on, uh, if maybe the reins were handed over to somebody else, maybe it could be redeemed. I don't know, but it's going to be tough to forget because even though I didn't understand what had happened at the time, I remember seeing footage on the news of just the wasteland
Yeah, it
after the
looked
event.
it looked like, Bosnia or something.
Yeah, and that's so many people throughout the documentary say, "Is this a where are we? Is this a
Yeah.
third world country?" Because it looked like a disaster had come through, and in many ways it did. So I see. I think I'm still more. Let's not ever do that again. If you're gonna try to break the record of biggest concert ever, do it under a different name with
Yeah.
different people at the helm. But I could understand wanting to redeem what the original Woodstock was. So I don't know. It's
Yeah, I mean they've got some good festivals out there now. Lollapalooza is one that
yeah,
goes on.
yeah,
Coachella. I guess Burning Man, if you want to call it a festival. I don't know what you
yeah.
call Burning Man, but
More of a
there's some
demonstration.
ones that have come in and carried the mantle. But I think you're right. I think Woodstock probably should be left in the 90s.
Yeah. It
Well,
probably should have been left in the 60s. But it ultimately, because now, when you only really had two big ones, that black eye looks a lot bigger when it's just a couple of events rather than,
yeah,
there's 1 out of 10 that had
yeah,
an issue,
yeah.
especially on the scale of Woodstock 99. So yeah, I think we should put a bow on it, Magnum.
Yeah, well, go crank up your Limp Biscuit, get out your candle, and don't light anything on fire. But I think this is a good conversation. I enjoyed it,
I did
and
too.
I'm David Pumpkins.
One has to wonder if David Pumpkins had performed at Woodstock 99, would it have changed how things went? Hmm. I mean, it really could have brought people back together and, maybe changed the course of history and we'd have Woodstock every year. But we'll never know because we'll never know. Thank you once again for joining us here at Group Chat After Dark. We love having you. You're always welcome. As long as you can put up with us, we love to have you. So catch us anywhere that you can find social medias and whatnot. We're on the Twitter, we're on the Facebook, we're on the YouTube. That's about it because we don't do some of the other things. So not anywhere. But if you want to listen to this podcast, you can do it pretty much anywhere. Anywhere you get a podcast, if you search Group Chat After Dark, chances are you're going to find us. You can also find us at RatherDonkeyProductions.com, ToddSux.com, GroupChatAfterDark.com, RTDShop.com, DukeHouston.com, ToddSux.com, spelled differently. You can find us anywhere, and all those things will get you back to Group Chat After Dark if that's your introduction. But we've also got short films and web series and other things you might enjoy. And go buy some shirts with our logos on it. Why not? Or a mouse pad or a tote bag. Just do it. Just do it. We don't care. We're all about money here. That's what we're about. It's like Michael Lang of Woodstock 99. Anyway, thank you once again, and we will catch you next month on Group Chat After dark.